Hello, friends. It's Chapo.
You're doing dinner table pettifoggery.
It reminded me of Waiting for Guffman when he starts to. It's like in France when they'd smack you with a glove and be like D'Artagnan, and he'd slap him.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Bunch of guys eating small cakes, doing cutting remarks to each other.
Yeah.
That's all this is, just blown up, and we
Well,
all
it's
have
a
to
depoliticized
pretend that
country.
we give a shit about it. Yeah, because we've drained politics of any meaning.
I mean, another thing that you pointed out a lot recently that is baffling and infuriating is that the way these people tell on themselves and the way they talk about politics is exactly like the way they talk about their TV programs and their stories and their movies, in that they think that like an election campaign is like, why didn't the screenwriters include more time for Kamala Harris or whatever? You know,
yeah, wow, they got to fire the
They
showrunner.
were really a big fan of Bernie until season 10, and then the writers just went full misogyny, and it was a huge disaster like Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it's just another fucking prestige show to watch and comment on while you wait to die.
All right, I want to get to Pete Buttigieg. We can do a little we can transition from snakes to rats.
Yes,
at the end of the show, but
From
like
the year of the
logical thing.
snake to the year of the rat.
Yeah, exactly. We'll go through the whole Chinese zodiac, but so like I give you just a little snatch of that Rebecca Tracer column from over 10 years ago now. Yep. Literally the exact same script.
that is wild. Even the irony poisoned bro angle.
And again, and then implying that being passionately for a candidate and disliking another candidate like is bad or suspect if one of them is a woman, or that like it's just like that dislike of Hillary Clinton or any female politician like bespeaks like a hidden unconscious sexism, which again is an accusation that no one can defend themselves from. Right. Because what are you going to say? I have no unconscious biases whatsoever. Well, then you look like a fucking chump. Right. But then if you admit it, then like again, you're hanging yourself for these fucking people.
Yeah.
Because the unspoken assumption is that all politics is just an interpersonal belief. It's like, well, if you don't like this candidate, it must be because of some personal opinion you have of them as a person.
So I'd like to actually like bring it into the present now by doing a reading series from an old favorite who, again, we talked about in 2016. This comes courtesy of Virginia Heffernan.
Oh, boy.
You will remember very, very early on in the show, I think it was right after the election, we read her piece for Lenny Letter.
Light itself.
That said that Hillary is light itself. She compared Hillary Clinton to the goddess Athena.
Yeah, absolutely.
And said that she is a world historical figure on par with, like, I don't know, Alexander the Great, or like just...
It's all true.
It was one of the most deranged things I think I've ever read about Hillary Clinton.
Well, you know, she's had a hard time of it since Doug left.
That was a cut.
My eyes are getting weary.
So this is Virginia Heffernan writing in the Los Angeles Times just the other day. Opinion. Elizabeth Warren brushed off Bernie Sanders and taught a master class in handling sexism.
Oh, God.
It's a new school course he's doing.
So, as the Democratic debate in Iowa wrapped Tuesday night, Senator Elizabeth Warren confronted the extended hand of Senator Bernie Sanders. He was plainly after one of those no hard feelings, good game handshakes. We're cool, right? Warren wasn't cool.
I agree.
Cap that. That's a blurb for the campaign there.
Damn.
It's hard to have the presence of mind to refuse the near mandatory displays of collegiality, but she did, folding her hands. Nole mi tangere, touch me not. CNN had cut the sound by that time. Well, no, they hadn't actually.
This was before
the audio
came out.
Yeah,
Right.
But in the pantomime, she seemed to be lecturing Sanders. It's a commonplace to say that lefties shouldn't squabble among themselves, even in a primary.
Well, what?
But
whatever.
no one's ever said that.
No one said that.
Okay.
Not a thing.
When it's obligatory.
How many times has there ever been like more than one serious left-wing contender in a fucking primary to even compete against each other before?
But Warren was right to confront Sanders on Tuesday, not least because it showed she's in fighting shape for November. Keen, even-tempered, quick on her feet. And she addressed sexism in the campaign with imagination and subtlety. Remember, Trump's capacity for sexism was considered one of his strong suits as a candidate in 2016.
What?
Did anyone extol that, like, literally?
Just imagining like tail of the tape. You know, they're like, I mean, stay here. Well, he's maxed out on sexism here. That's going to be real strong when he they start throwing haymakers. He's going to be able to just do that super sexism punch.
Now, see the thing here is watch the tape. If you open up a passing game, you got to start with a good sexism game. Bam, boom. All right, so watching the Tuesday night kabuki in slow-mo, you can see that Sanders, who's notoriously irritable and suffers from cardiac issues, was riled by whatever Warren said. Yeah, calling him a liar to his face. I'd be riled by that too.
I mean, she's the one who's riled in that exchange, but whatever.
And by her refusal to be who's notoriously irritable and suffers from cardiac issues, was riled by whatever Warren said and by her refusal to be touched. It was a handshake.
Where's my hug? Where's my hug?
He shook a finger at her. Then again, he seemed intent on freeing her right hand to grab it.
Amazing.
We all know this stock male move. Come on, baby. Give me a hug. We're still friends.
There it is.
Yeah.
I mean, the stock move is just shaking hands after a debate,
That's a
as
pretty
they all
stock
do.
move.
Everyone else
Literally
on the stage was
everyone.
actually doing it as well.
Yeah.
At that time.
Sure. During the debate, Sanders had gaslighted Warren over
God.
whether he told her a female candidate
Had
couldn't win the
gaslighted.
2020 election. But now he wanted her to forgive and forget. If he could be seen shaking her hand, he might be off the hook. But nope, Warren didn't play along. Sanders huffed off. Okay, this is one of the guys that's like, he gaslighted her about whether a female candidate couldn't win. Like, this whole thing is like, they're again, as we said at the very beginning, this is a fundamental disagreement. It's essentially unfalsifiable.
Right.
But I'm sorry, where these media feminists are at, as they were in 2008, 2016, and now, essentially what they are saying is that you cannot disagree with me, a woman, and not be a sexist.
And gaslighter.
And like a gaslighter, that you're disagreeing with me on any point of fact or disagreement or whatever
Is actually
a tactic of subtle
Yes.
manipulation tactic that is a trademark of abusive relationships. They're like, again, this is just complaining about fairness.
Yeah.
Is they're just saying it's not fair for you to disagree with me, either Warren, who's a woman, and also me, who's also a woman.
Yeah.
That any conflict or any argument of any kind, or bringing up someone's public record of statements and policies and to draw a contrast between another person who's a man, that's unfair. You can't do that. And again, if a woman says something, she's living her truth.
Yeah.
And to take issue whatsoever with the factual claims of someone auditioning to be president of the United States or to assess their credibility in any way is misogynist.
Yes.
Again, I don't think that many people really buy this.
I mean, it doesn't seem that way, but there's just so much of it in the discourse that if you spend your day having your brain melted by it, it's hard not to think that it's a hegemonic idea.
Sure. Okay, going on with Virginia here. Sure. During the debate, no one, or at least no Democrat, can afford to get gender issues wrong these days. The remarkable radioactivity of the topic may have been best illustrated in a 2008 Saturday Night Live sketch in which a group at a dinner table discusses a date. None of the friends can put a foot right, and each false move sets off a horror movie montage when one character says something dithy like, well, while I applaud the Me Too movement, or she should have left, terror reigns, buffaloes charge, necromancy is in the air, and the pizza rat appears to forecast end times.
I don't know
Matt, did
where
you
we
remember
are
this sketch?
If you don't know the
Yeah.
SNL reference,
Is it Pizza Rat? I mean, I probably saw it, but I don't remember it.
But again, I mean, you cannot mistake here.
Oh, she's drawing it directly
shift
to
domestic violence. From Sanders saying, I didn't say that.
Yeah.
Which
is what's so disgusting about this, because it's a very cynical move, but the effectiveness that it exists is from the fact that if you are a woman, you probably have experienced some pretty dire sexism in your life, and you have experiences about it, and these people are intentionally trying to be like, well, this is that.
Yes.
This is your thing, the horrible thing that happened to you.
Yeah.
That's what happened to this U.S. senator who's running for fucking president.
Yeah.
I saw, one of those assholes on MSNBC. I saw him just the day after the debate. He's one of their stock, like, anti-Bernie talking heads. And he goes on there and he says, what I saw in the face of Elizabeth Warren on the stage of that debate was the face of every woman in America, every young woman in America, every African American in America, every LGBT person, every disabled person in America. That was the look of them standing up for themselves after being belittled or othered the very time. It's just like, this shit could not be more cynical.
That's the alternate DNA
it's just
test.
like,
She's all of those things at once. That's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot of things to see on the face of Elizabeth Warren, no matter what where her cheekbones are.
I believe him.
But again, like it shouldn't surprise any of us. But at the end of the day, there is some part in me that is still kind of fucking taken aback by how breathtakingly cynical and evil this shit is.
Yeah,
and how the ease with which people deploy it. Or is kind of like, again, people who spend most of their careers writing books or like talking about, issues like the way that you're supposed to take seriously, the ease with which they deploy this shit in the most astonishingly dishonest way possible.
Here's a question, a tough one, and we're probably not even. It's probably not as bad as it's even going to get yet. But do you think this is worse than 2016 so far, or
no,
not as bad?
I don't know.
I've seen people say
It,
they think it's worse. I don't think it's quite as bad as 2016.
No, I think,
but maybe I've just been luxuriously logged off or something.
I think, like, as is the case, like our discourse, or the people who imbibe the spice melange every day on Twitter, are invariably driving themselves exponentially more insane as the day goes by, and
so
our media,
cumulatively,
our media is, I think, getting more dishonest by the fucking day.
Yeah.
But like overall, I don't think it is as bad as 2016, largely because I think the Bernie bro narrative has become kind of a joke.
Yeah,
like I think it's sputtered out to a large degree, or like the fact that they're trying to deploy this again this late in the game, I think smacks of a kind of desperation, and I think most people just kind of see it for what it is, or just use Bernie bro like a punchline,
right?
Rather than like a serious accusation of like how deep misogyny goes on the left or in the Sanders campaign or whatever. And I think Sanders this time around running for office has done a better job of like broadening his appeal.
Yeah, and let's be honest, the opponent who would, if you'll excuse the pun, engender this type of strategy is weaker and trailing him rather than leading at all times and enjoying a siege mentality.
I remember that sketch now. The SNL sketch she's referring to. And she says in the thing, well, Bernie wasn't able to, because the joke of the sketch is you can't talk about Me Too without it becoming fraught, and there's no right thing to say without getting owned somehow. Mm-hmm. And she's saying, well, Bernie couldn't bring the levity of that sketch. But the point of that sketch is that if you get in that place, you are fucked, and there's nothing to do.
It's the Kobayashi Maru test. It's a lose-lose.
It's literally saying that Bernie couldn't say anything without getting owned, and then she uses it as to say that he fucked up by not getting on his fucking knees on broken glass or whatever the hell bullshit they think would have made it better. While absolutely lying about that, by the way.
Okay, going on here. Sanders' dispute with Warren had erupted the day before with a news report of the 2018 meeting between them, at which, according to CNN, Sanders told Warren a woman cannot win the presidential election. A woman cannot win a presidential election. Warren confirmed the story. Sanders' aides then called CNN's and Warren's account a lie. A lie. Pretty strenuous protesting too much denial of something that could have been handily mitigated. If Sanders had more composure...
Somebody lies about you, you're not supposed to say they lied about you?
And again, just saying, that's a lie. I'm denying that this happened is not protesting too much. It's literally a protest. It's the least you could possibly protest if someone calls you a liar and you want to defend yourself from the charge.
His answer on stage was literally, no, it didn't happen. And then when they said, are you sure saying it didn't happen? He said, that's correct.
Yeah.
That's not saying much.
So here's how Sanders could have handily mitigated this. And we talked about this earlier, how this is just, they're like, don't you want to do the thing that will give us literally the sore steak to drive through your heart over and over again as much as we want? Yeah. If Sanders had more composure, he might have confirmed the report too. Don't we all think he said something close to what was reported?
Yeah.
Yeah, we all think that. For sure.
Let's admit it.
Then Sanders could have explained that he, like many feminists, fears America is too sexist to elect a Madam President. Done. Instead, his campaign distilled to a poisonous brew all the current male anxieties about gender with one word: lie. On Twitter, pro-Sanders botnets drove the point home with a classy "lying Liz" hashtag. Again, it's just like once you start talking about bots on Twitter, or when you've once you've convinced yourself that the majority of people that you interact with on Twitter are not real or are just robots, you have lost your mind.
You are literally Dwayne Hoover for Breakfast of Champions.
Yes.
In Iowa, Sanders bloviated when the inevitable question about the report surfaced. Anybody knows me knows that it's incomprehensible that I would think that a woman cannot be a president of the United States. Inconceivable. Then, how could anybody in a million years not believe that a woman could become president of the United States? In a million years. Sanders' move to the general case did his alibi no favors, and the moderators from CNN, which co-hosted the debate Tuesday, clearly didn't buy his rejection of the reporting.
Because they were weighing the fucking evidence. They had a fucking
no, exactly. Like if they
lie detector on his ass.
If they didn't buy his denial of the report, they would have dedicated some amount of time to explicating what was said and getting both of them on the record with their accounts of that. No, what they did is they just said, "Did you lie?" No. Elizabeth Warren, when he lied to you, how did that make you feel?
People have, of course, pointed out correctly, for-profit media should not be in charge of moderating presidential debates.
Yeah,
not only was it a for-profit company moderating the debate, it was a for-profit company that, against its competitors, had a story it wanted to push from its own network in the debate. Yeah. It was even more vertically integrated than the normal incentive.
Their fucking reputation stands on the claim that he said this thing. So of course they're not going to be convinced by his denial.
On their own channel, say, "Oh, I guess we fucked up. Maybe we should debunk the story live on air." It's like, no, of course they're not going to do that. They had no choice. Amazing.
At the same time, who cares what Sanders said in a casual meeting? Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. If Warren had told Sanders a Jewish man pushing 80 can't win because the country's too ageist, she'd have nothing to be ashamed of.
So Bernie doesn't have anything to be ashamed of? Is that what that means?
But the thing is, what they have denied is that he said, "I don't think a woman can be president."
Right.
But I don't know whether he said it openly, but the sources familiar with his side of the meeting said
Trump will weaponize gender.
Trump is sexist and will weaponize this in a way that he did the last time. Right? So that he's like, they've already said like that's basically the bone of contention. He's just stating flatly what all of these, media feminists and Hillary people made their big case after Hillary lost the election is just, America's too sexist.
Right.
So if you acknowledging that in private, again, he didn't do anything wrong, but what he's denying is not saying that. He's denying saying
a woman can't win a presidency.
Can't win this election. He just said, if you're going to do it, you're going to have to deal with this. Yeah. So be ready for that.
Usually, as you just pointed out, tracks with every single one of these people's contention that women have it harder when they're running. That's all that would have meant.
But for Sanders and many politicians like him, this is the gender issue in 2020. Around the gender, a perimeter make. It's not a celebration of the Equal Rights Amendment, which astonishingly and way past deadline, the Commonwealth of Virginia ratified Wednesday. Instead, it's pizza rats and terror. Again, she's back to the pizza rat. Was that in the SNL sketch,
I
Matt?
think at the end the pizza rat shows up while they're all freaking out.
Dude, like what?
The classic SNL character.
When the Sanders campaign said Warren lied, and Sanders himself insisted outrageously on his feminist bona fides in a million years, and then tried to buttonhole Warren into a handshake only to storm off when he couldn't seal the deal. God. All that only enacted the sexism he was at pains to deny. Warren's performance told a different story. Her point was less about sexism than about winning. She coolly reviewed the records of the people on stage. Sanders said a woman couldn't win? Well, isn't that special? Another SNL reference that she's going with here. Church lady. Because the two women on the debate stage, Warren and Amy Klobuchar, had won every single election they'd been in. Warren went on. The men on stage collectively lost 10 elections. Sanders alone has lost 7. Oh, and she also pointed out she was the only person on stage to have beaten a Republican incumbent, someone in Trump's position in the last 30 years. Not so, Sanders cried. He had beaten a Republican incumbent in 1990. Right, Warren replied, 30 years ago, 2020 minus 1990. Sanders was wrong in thinking Warren hadn't clocked his George H.W. Bush era win, but the arithmetic is besides the point. Sanders just wanted to double down on lying Liz. When I saw Elizabeth Warren's face, said this is what I was referring to. When I saw Elizabeth Warren's face, said the political scientist Jason Johnson later, is the face of every single person who has heard someone say something offensive or sexist. You know you heard it, and then you see them deny it in public. Warren won. She also proved she's a master strategist. She didn't let Sanders get away with denying he's sexist Tuesday night. Instead, she checkmated him into proving it.
Single-handedly, with no help from, say, a giant media conglomerate that was asking the questions and publishing the story.
I mean, here's what I'm saying is like why I think that this is not technically as bad as 2016. Because like you read this and like it's absurd. And like, you know, we're a bunch of awful irony-soaked dude bros. Dudes, we are several the chair and co-chairs of the Dudes Rock movement.
Yes.
So it's easy to dismiss us saying this or making fun of it.
We all have our hands in our pants Al Bundy style while we record this.
No, ma'am.
Yes.
Yeah, we all remember. But here's what I'm saying. Yeah, and anyone who's inclined to will hear this and just it'll be more coal for the furnace of
these dude bros throwing it up
of the gender war 2020, gender war, final conflict.
My favorite William Shatner novel.
But here's the thing: do you know any women in your personal life or like overall who take this shit seriously? Or for whom this isn't as big of a joke as it is to us?
I'll say one thing. I think I would have known someone a couple years ago, like in 2016. But now, as you suggest, people who were, kind of sympathetic to this kind of argumentation around Hillary either don't think it applies this time or they reflect on 2016 and thought that actually was all a bunch of bullshit. So to your point, I think the people who would be inclined to have agreed with a piece like Virginia's 4 years ago don't now. I don't know anyone who talks like this or thinks like this who's a woman.
Well, I mean, we don't want to get into the Pauline Kael trap.
Well, sure, but but the polls, like I say, I know we are talking about a social media. Let's just say women under the age of 40 in this country. It's not just anecdotally. Polls will bear out that the vast majority of them support Bernie Sanders.
Yep. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I think this was largely just a week long. The laser on the wall for a bunch of cats to scratch at. We'll see.
All right, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But like I said, just to reiterate again, the only thing that matters now is who's going to turn out the most people to caucus in Iowa, like 2.5 weeks from now. That's the only thing that matters.
Yep.
And I don't think that this will matter to that effect at all. And if Warren does anything other than a strong second in Iowa, we will not have to worry about this shit anymore.
Bye-bye.
All right. Before we go, let's talk real quick about the rat. Let's talk the Rat Boy, because Brendan, you brought up there is this video of his sort of like endorsement interview with the New York Times in their like conference room, where like they sit around a table and then all the New York Times like the New York Times
I think it's the opinion
lanyards, the opinion editors and writers,
the Bennett's boys,
the Bennett boys.
Did Michael Bennett get an interview with them, by the way? Because that would have been weird talking to his brother about endorsing him.
I don't know a lot about the context of the clip except for what you just said. It's the New York Times vetting everybody,
and like they grill everyone. And this is like, and Bernie did it last week when they literally asked him like, they're like, hey, have you ever had your heart broken? And he was like, what? You mean personally? And they were like, yeah. And he's like, I'm not going to answer that. Like,
that was embarrassing.
It was
deeply.
It was really bad. But yeah, let's just look at this.
This one was way better. So I was laughing about this, Matt. All morning.
Matt hasn't seen this. We're gonna edit the audio into this, but I'm just gonna play it for Matt right now.
Wait, can we just set the scene?
Yeah. I want to say, you set it up.
So, both for Matt, who's about to visually see it, but for you at home, in case you haven't, Pete is in the room with the board, looking like a rat, and he is now questioned by this man who looks like Bob Balaban and talks like Bob Balaban, and is unrelenting against what is usually, I think, a media darling candidate.
So he looks and talks like Bob Balaban, but Brendan, you pointed it out. His affect is exactly like Ash from Alien, when it's just his like milk covered head on a fucking table, just going,
is the architect.
I admire its purity. I won't lie to you about your chances, but you have my sympathies.
He is the architect in the Matrix. Yeah. He is an android, a righteous android in the face of Pete.
All right,
so just with that in mind.
Okay. I hate to see robot-on-robot violence.
You've been on the front lines of corporate downsizing. You've been on the front lines of corporate price fixing. You've been on the front lines of our misadventures.
I'm sorry,
of our misadventures in foreign policy. You've had direct experience of many of the things that make a lot of young people very angry about the way that this country is operating right now. You don't seem to embody that anger.
So the proposition that I've been on front lines of corporate price fixing is just to get
We
that
can
out.
swear!
He did a cuss.
Wait, rewind, because his answer is what's great.
You don't seem to embody that anger.
So the proposition that I've been on front lines of corporate price fixing is just to get that out of the way.
You worked for a company that was fixing bread prices.
No, I worked for a consulting company that had a client that may have been involved in fixing what was apparently in a scandal. I was not aware of the Canadian bread pricing scandal until last night.
But do you feel the anger that many young people feel about the state of this?
Yeah, of course, because it destroyed my city. I grew up.
You can turn it off after that, because then he just dissembles. But when it cuts back to him after that very robotic opening, he goes, first of all, just want to say that's bullshit. He goes, but he worked for a company that was fixing bread prices. I mean, it was just so dead-eyed, and his weird accent. It's like he's talking in code.
Yeah.
Like in literal JavaScript.
I do love the response. That's, excuse me, I was a consultant for a company that may have fixed bread prices.
But
that's the kind of straight shooting people really love.
I was watching that, and it was just, what are you doing, Pete? I'm trying to bring the country together with our shared values. I can't let you do that, Pete.
Pete, are you fixing bread prices again?
I don't know why it made me laugh so hard, but it was just like, I don't know who that guy is, first of all.
Yeah.
I don't know like his writing or his role in the New York Times, but his performance there is so good. And Pete, of course, it makes him look horrible.
We've been fixing the bread prices.
But you work for
We're
a
very,
company.
very angry at you for fixing the bread
it's kind of
prices.
Hannibal Lecter-ish a little bit as well. It's Balaban, Lecter,
Ash.
Android Ash. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Hal.
Yeah. Yes.
No, dude. Yeah, who is that guy? He scares
awesome.
me.
I love him.
He's
terrifying.
He's fucking scary, dude.
But I want him.
Why is your voice like that, dude? Like,
I want him to be in an all-white suit explaining how Neo has to plug back into the code.
and they really nail Pete really hard. Ask him first question. What did Miggs yell at you? He hissed at you as you came into the office. What did he say?
What's the most you've ever made by fixing bread? After that interview, there was at least one stray dog in New York City that did not make it through the night.
As Felix said, he went straight to the animal shelter for a kinetic situation.
Yeah.
He got real kinetic at a dog shelter.
But that was so amazing is that the obvious usual punchline is Pete is a robot. He doesn't have a soul, but he looks more human in that one clip. In that one clip, he finally looks a little bit relatable.
In that actual interview on the extended thing in the New York Times, he says that he was not aware that millennials are calling him Mayo Pete.
Yes. Are you aware of your nickname on Twitter?